Welcome back to In the Arena, Dylan Morris, bro. It's actually such a pleasure to have you on, man. I'm super excited about this conversation. It's when I started this, it was actually one of the conversations I really wanted to have because of your story, what you're doing right now in the world, and just super excited for you to share it. So, without further ado, bro, rip into your story and tell us who are you?
Yeah, sweet, bro. No, I really appreciate you having me on first and foremost. I listened to your first podcast that you did on the way home from the gym, and to be honest, yeah, it was really epic to see how vulnerable you were and how much you opened up. So when you gave me that opportunity to kind of tell my story, it was a no-brainer. So yeah, I guess my kind of story and where it all starts is definitely multifaceted and multicultural. I kind of got brought up overseas, and although I may look like a Kiwi and talk like a Kiwi, really my life was like a bit of an evolution between country to country. As I was born in Indonesia, and then after 2 years I moved to Laos, and then from there I spent 7 years in Argentina, 2 years in Ecuador, and then it ended up in Keri, New Zealand, out of all places. So yeah, it was a bit of a transition. And as I said, even though I may look like a Kiwi sometimes, I definitely don't feel like a Kiwi, especially having such a big amount of time spent in South America. I definitely do feel as though that's kind of influenced my behavior and my culture. And so yeah, from there was a big transition through to New Zealand when I was about 13. As I said, I moved to Keri College and eventually found myself at Tauranga Boys, which again was a big transition at a big all boys school. I had the opportunity to go down to Ole Football Academy in year 11. So I spent year 9 and 10 at Tauranga Boys, and then in year 11 I managed to get the opportunity to go to Ole and really develop my footballing career. I spent 1 year there with Declan Edge, which was a really profound experience, and I learnt a lot footballing wise, but probably learnt way more in terms of life and how I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. After that year 11 year, it definitely was quite a tough year, moving away, and I just decided to change things up. And fortunately, Chris Sarsic at St. Kitts got me up there for my final 2 years at school. So that was really cool. From there, managed to kick on to go to Georgia State University. That was an unreal experience. I managed to spend 3 years there, 3.5 years actually, and because of COVID I decided to come home and eventually graduate from University of Auckland with a finance and innovation degree. And now, which we'll probably get into, I do nothing to do with finance, but everything to do with innovation and entrepreneurship. So some of it was useful, but probably 95% of it wasn't. But definitely always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, I guess. And then kind of managed to start my own business, and I guess here we are.
Nice, man. That's incredible. Thanks for sharing first and foremost. I want to dive into the fact of you growing up from so many different places and moving around. Like, in terms of the experience itself, the challenges. What were some of the challenges that you faced? Was it like more going from place to place, like changing networks all the time, having to develop yourself socially, or was it actually just being in a physically different place?
Yeah, I think from a young age, going from place to place, you adapt quite well to things. You pick up languages quite quickly, you make new friends quite quickly. So it wasn't actually the adaptation of place to place. What I found most difficult, especially coming back home to New Zealand, was the fact that I looked like a Kiwi, but I actually wasn't Kiwi. And kind of my mentality and the way that I was very different to Kiwis, because I consider myself a large part Argentine in what I do and how I behave, and kind of my cultural upbringing, and so for me, it was kind of like that transition between going from being in Latin America to just like a normal, Kiwi lifestyle, and having to adapt to that. And to be honest, I didn't actually recognize how much it affected me until early this year, because I hadn't been involved with like a Latin community here in New Zealand for quite a long time until I started playing here for Manariwa. And a lot of my friends were all from Argentina, Chile, and just general Spanish-speaking countries. And I guess it was kind of like a subconscious revelation in a way. Like, I always felt it was me that was a little bit strange, or wasn't quite Kiwi, or didn't really fit into what probably the normal Kiwi male would be doing. But like hanging out with them, and it took me like 7 years to figure out, was the fact that like I'm actually not Kiwi, and that's okay, and hanging out with them and sharing their cultural experiences really made me realize how much that impacted, and how much the early years of your life will impact you for the rest of your life. And that was like quite profound for me to, after such a long time, not recognizing that, and to be able to then go and finally like be okay with, all right, you're not a typical Kiwi bloke, and that's okay because you've had not a typical Kiwi upbringing. That was quite profound for me, and yeah, just I guess that overall adaptation into Kiwi lifestyle was quite hard, because as New Zealanders have a certain way of being, and yeah, like it's obviously cultures vary, so it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the way that I am.
Yeah, did you feel like when you moved over, being from and acting in different cultural ways, did you feel like especially in New Zealand, you're talking about like that male kind of presence, right? That kind of cultural, I guess, presence, and I'm not going to say aggression, but it's like there's like a male dominance kind of feeling, right? Where in New Zealand you got to be this tough, like hard bastard, basically. Did you feel like that there was a lot of pressure in terms of having to conform to that, or trying to fit in that particular way?
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely do, and have felt that all my life. I've kind of felt as though there was kind of this underlying, male Kiwi bravado that does like occur within society. I think a lot of it comes from Kiwi culture, and that's what I learned to understand, is that we're very much like a farming stoic culture, and that kind of like understanding where they've come from, and how hard working they are, and how that's kind of ingrained in our DNA. I can understand why Kiwi like blokes in particular are like that, and I've learned to kind of accept it, and not to try and change it, but I've learned to accept it. The one thing that I have noticed though, and something that you may find quite interesting in between cultures that Kiwis don't have, and particularly males, is this kind of notion of like suffering. And because I've thought quite deeply about this as to why we have like high depression rates, as we all know, and why there's quite an issue with it. And there's a lot of rhetoric about like talking up, and like speaking about your feelings, and that, and I think that's 100% correct. But I do think there's this other notion that, especially like coming from a South American background, that doesn't play out in normal Kiwi culture, and that this notion of suffering and the acceptance of suffering, and that life isn't just about, it's not just about kind of pleasure and like going to the beach and like all this type of stuff. Like actually real like happiness and emotion, especially within my life, has come through times of suffering, and through putting yourself out there, and through doing those things that ought to be done, and you do them and you just do them anyway, even though it's hard. And like in South America, especially when Argentina won the World Cup, you always hear them talking about like if you don't suffer for it, it doesn't count. There's like a saying, it's like lo que no se sufre no se vale, and it's kind of like that's what it is. It's like if you don't suffer for it, it doesn't count. And I do think that a lot of this kind of Kiwi like notion and lifestyle does come from not people wanting to put themselves outside of their comfort zone, And that in return later down the track really does have an impact on particularly men. I think like a lot of men are built to conquer and to be on a mission and to do all those things. And they say like the true definition of hell is that when the man that you could have been meets the man that you are in the mirror, And I kind of feel as though a lot of the bravado, the jest, and the kind of aggression, the underlying things, is because a lot of us want to be someone, but they don't want to put themselves out there in order to be that guy or that person because of the vulnerabilities that come with it, and it's tough because it's like if you're gonna be successful, if you're gonna be someone that you want to become, it's super lonely, bro. Like, and not a lot of people understand what you go through, how you go through it, and that's just the honest reality of becoming successful, becoming someone that you want to become. Not a lot of people are going to understand you. So the easy option is going to be just stay in your comfort zone, live a normal life, go on your 3-week holiday to your batch, and rinse and repeat, But I think there's a lot of people living out there with this like angst of like, what could I have been, And I think that angst causes that underlying anger and depression that we see, especially amongst men. So I think a lot of it's got to do with the mission, putting yourself out there, suffering, and that it's okay to suffer. It's okay to go through hard times, because ultimately, if you don't suffer, then it's not worth it in the end,
Bro, that's so powerful, and it's incredible insight. There's a few things in there that I kind of want to unpack. I think one of the things is what you're just saying is it's like that. You could say the stoic or the message of the story of Hercules was at the very beginning he had the option of going down an easy path where he was guaranteed happiness and joy in life, and then he had the option of going down the hard path. And we say that most of the time that we choose the hard path, it's usually the right path to take, because as you're saying, without suffering, without that dedication, the sacrifice, whatever it takes, the end goal isn't going to be worth it if you're just sitting around. And then secondly, in terms of like the culture in New Zealand, I think a lot of that comes down to the classic tall poppy syndrome, right? So many people are genuinely afraid to step outside their comfort zones, to not conform with society, and to put themselves at risk because of the fact that there is a culture being cut down, being absolutely chopped down. Now, for yourself, you've taken a big risk in terms of putting yourself out there, building a brand, building a business. Have you found that at all?
Yeah, so firstly, like, I think that there is certainly like an underlying degree of tall poppy syndrome, and that degree really does like exacerbate at the start of whatever you're trying to do, because when you start something and when you put yourself out there, like for example yourself, you're not going to be Joe Rogan overnight, right? And Joe Rogan had to start somewhere. And so when you start, and when you start creating, and when you start doing things, there's like I think there's really like 3 phases, and I say this to everyone when they first start. It's like the first phase is you're gonna get shit on, and then that's just a guarantee, like a guarantee that a percentage of people don't like what you're gonna do and gonna say it's not gonna work, and whatever it may be, there's definitely people that are gonna say that. Firstly, in that first stage, the people that don't support you when you first start and that shit on you, I guarantee them they're the people that want to be doing what you do. So that's like the ultimate thing. Like, jealousy speaks 1,000 words, bro. Like when I hear people ripping into me and ripping what I'm doing, I'm like, oh, there's a reason why you're saying that, It's because you're insecure, because you wanted to do something but you didn't do it. And so I always think, like, number one, those types of people that when you start something and they're like, they don't want to support you or do things, like, don't worry, that's just parcel of people that are just like Joe average, so I always say, if you start something and people start talking badly about you, just look at where they are, and if they're not who you want to be, then don't worry about it. first thing. I guess there's a second stage where people start to take interest in what you do, and I'm kind of going through that stage at the moment, where probably the first 2 to 3 years, probably people looked at it and just thought like, what's this guy doing? Starting a business, selling socks, dabbling in TikTok, doing all this sort of stuff, creating content, like doing all this type of stuff. And then people were like, they just take a little bit of an interest, right? And it kind of moves from a phase where, okay, it's not like a joke anymore, this is like serious. He's taking it seriously and he's getting better at his craft, and now I'm going to start to engage a little bit, but they're still like on the sideline, And then I think there's a third phase where people are like, when you get to a certain level and people are like, yeah, I know that guy, and they start talking about you as if they know you. And it's like, it's super funny because, yeah, just seeing that evolution of people that have like popped in and out of my life, some that at the start are negative about it and now they're like, I know they talk, and so I think that's just like a natural evolution. And I always say, if someone's not in a position that you want to be in life, then don't take too much into what they're trying to say. And like, the biggest advice I can give, and this goes out to anyone who's trying to start something, who's trying to create content, is you have to surround yourself with people who, number one, support you, and number two, are on a similar path and mission to what you're on. And that there's like completely revolutionized, especially me in the last 6 months. I've cut so many people out of my life that I no longer needed, because they weren't supporting the mission, they weren't supporting the journey that I was on. Not just from a kind of just because of me, it's just because they weren't on their own journey as well. So it's very hard to relate to those types of people. I can instantly see like someone's Instagram profile, and I can kind of see what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve, and know kind of I'll be mates with this guy, and I've been following stuff with you for ages, always keeping in touch here and there, and obviously now we're talking. It's not like we've been best of mates, but I always know like that's the sort of guy that I'd want to hang out with. And across the last 6 months, like, I've just been hanging out with like savages, like guys that are in a different league than me, and that's just like completely transformed my life. Like, I met a guy, and I used to see his like Instagram stories, like gymming in the morning, like just like waking up at insane hours, bro. And I was like waking up at like 8 o'clock, and I was like looking at his stories, bro, and I was like, fuck, like I'd love to be that guy, but I'm not. But like, I'd love to be that guy who was just like a savage and like waking up at that hour. And so like I just became mates with him, and now we like go to the gym together every day at 4:30 in the morning. And like just that sort of stuff, and like taking advice from those types of people that are in a better position than you, surrounding yourself with that, mate, that's going to streamline, that's going to 10x your life more than any other piece of advice. So yeah, be really cautious about what goes in and out of those 2 years and who you hang out with.
Bro, let's roll off that. That's class. I was actually going to ask you about that, because obviously on social media I was going to ask you about the 4:59 a.m. club, and I actually saw it on your social media, and it made me think about what I was doing. And really what it sparked for me was, I'm in a place by myself, feeling quite isolated, and in the days I'm trying to figure out how can I maximize this time, what else can I do. And I was like, man, you're seeing 4:59, I'm like, this man's on the grind, genuinely on the grind. And I was like, okay, I had a conversation with another friend as well, as you're saying, surround yourself with these good people, and we were talking about the fact that it's like, okay, how can you train to become the man that you want to become in the future? So like Matthew McConaughey made the speech about chasing myself in 10 years, right? It's like, how can I start training myself now to be the husband, be the father, be that businessman, the footballer, or whatever in that life? How can I train that right now? So that motivated me to start putting things in place. But now for you, the question is like, I was going to ask, are you a man of routine? Like, do you find that those routines in terms of your life, your business, doing those gym sessions early, does that help you in terms of your flow or success? Do you find it really helps you to move forward?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And like, I was actually read a book by Tim Ferriss, who wrote the 4 Hour Work Week, and he wrote another book called Tribe of Mentors, and it was basically kind of a collation of 500 mentors that he's had, like billionaires, athletes, whatever it may be. And he said there's actually one commonality. There's multiple things that make people successful, but across like 500 people, of the most successful people that he had interviewed, he said there's one commonality, and the most commonality is that they have like quite a strict routine. And it's not strict in the way where it's not creative, but it's a routine. Like, they know when they wake up what they're going to do. And that to me takes the process and the thinking out of it, in terms of the procrastination, checking your phone, whatever. It's like, no, like the night before I set my tasks and I complete those tasks. And I'm kind of getting to the stage now where the routine is quite good, and I'm there now. And so I wanted to take it to the next level, and I guess once you kind of are in that routine and you've got built good habits, that's probably principle one, right? And if you want to be successful, I think like there's a few things you can do, and that's like wake up early, hit the gym, read, like, you know, take care of your body, if you can meditate, all that type of stuff. I think we all know kind of what good things are in order to be successful. You know, the hard part is implementing that. And if you need that help, I would totally recommend reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's a great first start. The next thing, and this is kind of where I'm at right now, is the routine's good, and now how can I maximize my output throughout the day? And so what I've kind of started to distinguish now is the difference between high value tasks and low value tasks. So like running a business, that's really, really important. So I always try and complete high value tasks first thing in the morning. And that's kind of, if there's a compass of where you want to go, if you want to go north, the high value task is the task that's going to take you there the quickest, right? So in a business sense, like for example, like my high value task today was sorting out a big order, as like a $20,000 order, and making sure that that order was in check, and that like I could go and invoice that order so I could get the money. Like that was the high value task that's going to move my business forward the quickest. A low value task would be like doing things like answering an email that you don't need to answer, or checking DMs, or you know, like doing those sorts of things that aren't going to move your business forward. And another like examples of high value tasks would be like you know, redefining your offer of what you do, you know, of your business, or creating new systems amongst your business that's going to make you more money. All these type of things, that's what's going to get you to the next level. So yeah, that's really important to then distinguish, right, where can I maximize my output? Because as an entrepreneur, you're thinking very much like an engineer. Engineers think of the way that you want to minimize the input to maximize your output. And that's very similar to, especially as a kind of singular business owner, how you can make the most amount of money is you can't just be a rabbit in a you know, like running around in circles, a rat in a rat race. You actually have to think about the systems, what tasks you need to complete, and what you can outsource as well.
Wow, it's brilliant insight. Never thought about that in terms of the comparison between entrepreneur and engineering. That's new to me, and that's powerful. Let's but we haven't even introduced your business. Like you've just talked about a $20,000 offer, and we haven't even talked about Apex Sportswear in the business. So talk to me about it, man. Talk to me about why you started, how you came up with the idea, and what was it all about?
Yeah, so I'd probably say like 2 years ago, probably a little bit longer now, I honestly, I just always had the vision of starting my own business. And going through entrepreneurship, like school, and learning a lot about business is kind of like, I always say, it's like, it was kind of like, say if you had two people, and let's just say you and your mate, and you decided that for 6 months you wanted to learn the piano, but all you did was read a book, and your mate decided to bash the keys of the piano instead of reading the piano book. And at the end of the 6 months, who would be the better piano player? The guy who just reads a book on piano, or the guy who actually just bashed the keys and try to make music? And that was kind of similar, like, beginning for me in entrepreneurship. It was like, I was sick and tired of just reading all this stuff and having all these ideas in my brain, and it was about like just going and bashing the keys. And that's really how it started. It was just like, I had this amalgamation of, right, I'm good at playing football, but I'm not good enough to become a pro. I'm good at solving problems, so why don't I just solve a football problem? And that's really what business is in the essence, is solving problems. And the bigger problem that you can solve, the more money that you're going to make. So for example, like if you solve a problem of like, I don't know, cleaning, I don't know, like just say picking up rubbish, off the street, you're going to get paid X amount. But if you solve a problem like building electric cars like Elon Musk, you're going to be a billionaire, So fundamentally all businesses is solving a problem. So I decided to solve football problems because I knew what footballers wanted. I knew the dynamic of the aesthetic of the footballer and what they knew, felt and thought. And so I wasn't starting from square one. I wasn't trying to build an electric car. I was trying to sell things to me, basically. I just wanted to create like shit that I wanted to wear, and that was basically the fundamental start of it. And if people bought, they bought, but if they didn't, I really didn't care. And I guess that's kind of been the foundation of why it's had some sort of modicum of success, was because I actually, like, genuinely at the start, I didn't really care about the bottom dollar. All I really cared about was building this kind of brand for footballers and having a bit of fun and really building something that I just liked and wanted to have for myself. And so from there, like, I started selling just grip socks in general, and I still do sell lots of grip socks. And it was a good item at the start, and like I sold probably like last year 2,000 pairs of socks, which was pretty crazy, like it was just random, it's just a random business, but I think that was a good start and what I wanted to do. But now over the past 6 months, like, it's become like grip socks. A lot of people have tried to do what I wanted to do. A lot of people, are kind of in there creating their own, which is completely fine. It's an open market and all that. But now it's just less about the rational function of. I always thought like people would buy based on rationality, and this is the biggest thing that I didn't understand when I first started. I used to try and sell like the socks as, right, you're gonna slip less, you're gonna you're gonna gain X amount of meters per game because you're gonna slip less, and you're gonna change direction quicker by 0.5 a second. And I used to think that that's what would sell. And then I read this book, Emotion by Design, by the chief designer of Nike. It was a really good book, and basically the whole premise of the book is that people buy based on emotion. They don't buy based on rationality. So people buy things and then rationalize them after. So for example, the biggest obvious one is like cars, bro. Like if you go and buy a car, and let's just say you buy a Toyota Corolla and a Maserati, two side by side, they're both going to get you from A to B in a similar time frame. But people buy the Maserati based on the emotion that it conveys when you have the Maserati. When you step out of the Maserati, what do people think of you? How do they perceive you? And the Maserati isn't a rational function of getting from A to B. That's not what the car is. The Maserati is like hard work, dedication. You've spent years working on your business, you've made money, whatever it may be, And so now I kind of think of Apex now, of building the brand, and it's taking a lot more time, of how can I convey an emotion to the end consumer that when they wear Apex, when they feel Apex, when they buy Apex, it's like you're the top. You walk into the change room and it's like, wow, he's wearing that. He obviously cares and invests in his performance. He wants to look good. He feels good, and that all translate into you playing better. And now moving into like what I want to do next is like clothing and really creating a brand for footballers. That's going to be probably the pivotal role. I guess, and sorry to take so long on this one, but it's quite complex. So probably a year ago, because I did coaching part-time, and I still do, because I didn't want to kind of just invest in the business and take money out of it. So I do throughout the afternoons coach, and the academy that I was working for basically had a kit supply contract up with Kappa. And obviously, like, I had manufactured things before, and I knew the ins and outs of like manufacturing a little bit. And I knew that this one particular contract was a lot of money because they go on tours, they do like camps, and like this contract was going to be big. And so I said to my boss, I was like I think I can do this. Like, you just got to trust me. I'll find the manufacturers and I'll do that. He's like, yep, we go on tour in 2 months. Like, you need to complete. I think the order was like 24 grand and of gear, and I was like, I'd never done this before, mate. I'd never even seen a size chart before. And so like I'm sitting there with my mum, and she's like, yeah, you just have to do it. Like, and I was like, I've got no idea how to measure clothes. I have no idea how to manufacture things. I didn't know how long it took. Anyway, it was like, I think it was like 4 days before the kids need to go on tour. My Chinese my manufacturers in China were just like mucking me around. Like, it was just an absolute shambles. But 4 days before we need to go, everything came in and it just like pulled off clutch, and that just kind of kicked on what is like now Apex Teamwear and producing and manufacturing kits. And that is probably 80% of the revenue that people don't see is all the teamwear stuff that we're doing, and that is a huge part of what we're going to do next, is kind of making sublimated uniforms, trying to sign clubs, everything like that. I always thought it was like wasn't as like sexy, like kind of doing teamwear, and it wasn't as cool as creating your own brand. But when you see the figures roll in, sometimes it's like, yeah, this is what business is. Sometimes you're going to kind of have businesses that aren't sexy, but they're making money. Like moving concrete, mate. There's some billionaire out there in Russia that's making billions moving concrete. It's not a great business, but he's making money. So that's kind of how it all kicked off.
Yeah, fair play to you, bro. Like, as you just said, you hadn't even seen a size chart before in your life, but as you were talking about with the piano, man, just get in there and start bashing keys away, right, and see what happens. And then you've generated 80% of your revenue from there based on your teamwear. That's incredible. But what baffles me, what some other people won't know, is that you didn't actually sell anything, right, for the first 3-4 months that you were in business.
Yeah, like, mate, this start, like, you're just kind of tracking along, like trying to just get things by, and I didn't really like try too much to just sell. I just wanted people to wear the product and to get the product out there, because the thing is like, if you're having to kind of sell your product, then like, and go and like really work hard on like just, I don't know, just selling and DMing people is probably like the product. You haven't got good product market fit. But if you hand them out, people like want more of it, and they like, I always try and test things before I bring things to market, and even and that's it's kind of quite important of an entrepreneur, especially like for a young business owner, is kind of creating what I call an MVP, or a minimal viable product. So I truly believe that any business that you wanted to create, you can test it out for like $500 whether or not you're going to have a good business. like I'll say, like for example, like let's just say you want to start a makeup brand, you know, a girl wants to start a makeup brand. So this is actually a true story. Someone came to me and was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I have like an idea of doing this. And they were like, I'm like, all right, so like how much is it gonna cost? And they're like, oh yeah, I need like 10 grand for stock here and then 10 grand here to do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, but have you sold any makeup yet? You know, how do you know it's like gonna work? And they're like, I don't. And so I was like, you know what you should do? You should just create one product, create one thing, have a unique value proposition with that product, and try and market that, and then test it. And then if you need to adjust, readjust, and what's wrong about it, and readjust it, and then eventually you're gonna get a good product. And so that's kind of what I've been doing, is like this evolution of like testing. It took me like a year, 2 years, and now I probably landed on the grip sock that I like the most, you know, that I can go and fully scale. But if I try to fully scale my vision, one of the grip socks, like my company would have stayed here, you know. But now because of the iteration and the evolution of what you're trying to do, then the grip socks now becoming, like, in my opinion anyway, like one of the best on the market. So yeah, like creating that minimal viable product was one of the main reasons why I wasn't like pushing to sell straight away, is because I needed to get feedback from the customer as to it. And at the end of the day, I wanted to create things for me, yes, but as a business owner, you have to be able to capture information as to what people like about it, what people don't, what are people's pain points, and then if you can market to those pain points, you're going to have a successful business. Again, just solving problems.
Yeah, do you think it comes down to the key factor of value and how you're providing value in that sense?
100%. And value comes in different ways, and I didn't realize this as kind of like I guess I would classify myself as a part-time content creator now with the TikTok and doing quite well. But yeah, value comes in different ways, and different people have different ways that they can give value, but I think everyone has value. For example, value can come through humor. You know, a lot of people gain large followings due to their funny nature, and so if you're funny, like, you should provide value being funny. Some other value could be like information, so you could provide tips, tricks, all that type of stuff. Another form of value is like motivation, so you can motivate people to do better. It's like classic example is David Goggins, you know. Probably the classic example of humor would be / information would be Joe Rogan too. Provides great amount of value that way. And then I think there's like this other value as well. It's like the fourth pillar. It's not my favorite, but that's like kind of looks as well. I do think that a way to provide value is obviously through aesthetics, and you kind of see that through obviously the evolution of like OnlyFans and things like that. So yeah, those are kind of the 4 ways that you can provide value. I think if you can nail down what kind of value that you're best at and hone in on that, like for me, I know like I mean, I'm funny on a night out, but on a regular day, mate, I'm not too funny. So like I'm not going to be a humorous guy. So I decided like information and probably motivation is my kind of niche, you know. But other people have, you know, different like forms of value, and you just got to pick what kind of value you want to create in the marketplace.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. With your brand, bro, you do work with quite a few professional athletes, some with large followings, others with not, but you do work in the professional market space as well. One of the things that I really admire about the value that you have in terms of the brand and who you work with is the types of people that Apex represents, right? Can you go into detail about like how you came up with that idea and that real value of and the characteristics of what Apex actually represents?
Yeah, I think like that's actually a really good question. Like I think Apex, I always think of it as a kind of the top of the food chain. You know, if you think of like an apex predator as like someone who's at the top, you know. And I again, like I think the brand and branding is such a interesting topic, and I always knew that in order to brand Apex the way that I wanted to brand it, I needed to have a certain aesthetic and feel about it. And that's taken some time, if you look at the Instagram, if you look at what I did like 2 years ago, it's completely different to what I do now. And it's kind of, again, just like learning and a bit of an evolution. But now I think I know who an Apex athlete is, similar to what Ben Francis would classify as a Gymshark athlete when he first started. And so I wanted to kind of build that clear identity of like who I wanted to work with and being like really specific about it. And when I think about it, it's kind of like probably a footballer who's got good aesthetic, who's probably got a bit of style to them, who's works really hard, and also like a nice guy as well. And I think that just all ties into your brand. And I think branding is one of the most complex things that you can do when you start a business, and good businesses have strong brands. And I always think of it as, especially in like sportswear and clothing and stuff, I always think of it as like, if Nike wanted to open a hotel tomorrow, you would know what the hotel would look and feel like because of the Nike's brand, But let's just say an average brand, I don't know, let's just say, I don't want to rip into anyone, but let's just say an average brand, that you just see and they're selling products here and there, but they've got no clear identity. You wouldn't know what that hotel would look like. It would be like so much stuff in it and it just look messy, And so, again, branding I think is like, and I like these little metaphors, and like it's kind of like a bouquet of flowers. Like imagine if you want to go give a girl a bouquet of flowers, and each flower represents like your brand, and like maybe in one flower is like, for us it's like footballers. Another flower would be like luxury, another flower would be lifestyle, another flower would be hard work. But if you have one flower within that brand, within that bouquet, that is kind of like a dead flower, then it diminishes your whole brand. And that's why it's such a complex thing. It's because if your website's not right, if the wording's not right, if your caption, if like the photo like is bad quality, all that type of stuff, it all conveys just an emotion to the end consumer. And that's kind of, I think the misconception is that you need to create loads of content for your brand, post every single day. I don't think that's true. I think that you need to create high value content that's to do with your brand, and that if that means less is more, then that's okay too. And I study brands that are outside of my niche in terms of football, and see how can I replicate that with an Apex twist, like some sick brands, bro, like represent what George Heaton does there. Like it's an unbelievable brand, and just like looking at his evolution, and that I think that's really, it's really important that you got to look at everything and what does it represent, and I think about things all the time when you go to the supermarket, how can you compare like your bottom of the range chocolate to Ferrero Rocher, who can charge 10x the price? What's the difference? It's everything to do, it's got nothing really to do with the chocolate too much, but it's got everything to do with the packaging, with the font, with where it's placed on the shelf, with the color scheme that's on it. Everything that makes Ferrero Rocher, that's what's a brand, and that's kind of over the past 6 months what I've been trying to develop more of.
Yeah, that's class. You just mentioned comparison, like comparing one brand to the other. So when you're in this entrepreneurial game and you're building this brand in this business, my last one of the episodes of the podcast I talked about comparing and how we can compare ourselves as people to what success is, what the definition of success is, how other people define their own success. And because of Instagram, because of social media, we can get caught in this trap of feeling like we're not enough, right? But how do you go about as a brand, and that you're in this process yourself, how you're sticking with your mission, staying clear on your own path, and then comparing, like you mentioned, Nike, there's Under Armour, Adidas. How do you say yourself, right, I'm going to stay in this, I have to stay in this mindset of my brand, my niche?
Yeah, that's actually a really, again, a good question. And that's probably the one thing that I've struggled with the most is not comparison to other brands, but is what you said, is kind of what I call like shiny objects. When you start to have some sort of like modicum of success, people start pulling you in different directions and saying you should do this or you should do that, or this would be a great idea. And it's not to say that those aren't good ideas, but you have to be crystal clear on what it is you're going to do and how that aligns with your brand. There was a good example that I heard on, it's kind of like a TED Talk with Tim Brown, who started Allbirds, the sustainable shoe company. And early on in his career, he had like an investor come up to him and say, you should make like golf polos, that would be a really good niche to create. And he like seriously considered it, started developing it a little bit, but then he came up with what he calls non-negotiables for the brand. So if he's entering in any kind of new product, any kind of partnership, there are a few non-negotiables that like it needs to have, in order to take on a new project. Because as you start to grow, it's not actually about what you say no, like it's more about what you say no to, because like my days are quite busy. People contact me and people want to do things, but it's actually about saying no, and that's been the hardest thing. The hardest part is, life is gonna pull you in different directions, but if you don't have the self-discipline just to say no, then like in all facets of life, you wanna get in shape, but you go and get takeout, or you want to wake up early, but you stay up late with your mates. It's actually the things that you say no to that are going to impact your life the most. And yeah, I think going back to your question on branding, creating those non-negotiables as to what it is in your mind that you want it to look like. And your vision is your vision, bro. Like, it's yours for a reason. And I've always said that as an entrepreneur, your job is to make people believe in your vision, whether it be people that you work with, whatever it may be. Like, you're the captain of your own ship, mate. And if you don't believe in it, and if you're going off and doing other things, how are you meant for other people to believe in it too? So create non-negotiables and believe in your vision, and be very careful about what you say yes to within your experience, because if you start to skew off brand, your customers are going to know straight away, and that's going to deter them.
Very powerful, and that's crystal clear as well. So how did you, in your creative process, how did you come up with your non-negotiables? I listen to the High Performance podcast, and I absolutely love it. I indulge it because they always ask their guests, like, what are your non-negotiables? 3 of them. And there's a lot of common factors, like if they're athletes, it's like hard work, discipline, consistency, things like that. So when you're talking about business, and at the end of the day it's business, but it's yourself, right? It's you as a person. You're trying to portray that, and what, as you said when you started, it's like, what do I like? So how do you develop that as yourself to create those non-negotiables?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, is sometimes as an entrepreneur, when you're first starting a business, it's very easy to live inside your own head a little bit and kind of have all these ideas bouncing up and down. So I think it's really handy to kind of create like a brand identity and what you're gonna represent. And your brand identity may change, I always say, like, what you want to do shouldn't change, like your mission, what you want to do, but how you do it could change, So you got to be able to adjust and pivot certain things, but what you want to do stays the same, like your mission. So going back to kind of developing non-negotiables, I think it's important to get in a group of people that you trust, and people that are smarter than you. So guys or girls that have been in business longer than you, that have started brands that are better than yours, and pay them or do whatever it needs to be done to get their advice on something. I remember when I was like 17 or 18, I wanted to start my own business, and I emailed Cecilia Robinson, the founder of My Food Bag, and I just said, look, I need 30 minutes of your time, like if you're willing to give it to me. And she was like, yep, meet me here on this day. So I went and I listened, and like those 30 minutes were more valuable than 50 hours at school. You know what I mean? Because certain people have certain perspectives on things that are going to allow you to rethink completely what you do, and yeah, like Naval Ravikant says, like 99% of the things you do won't matter, but it's the 1% that matters. So you could move, talk to one person, it allows you to move your business 1 degree, and it could skyrocket it. So in order to develop your non-negotiables, you got to sit around with people that are smarter than you, and you got to say, right, this is like what I want to do, what do you think, how would you do it? And that's what I always try and do, is you have to have the humility to go and be like, right, what do you think? Like, I don't know it all, like I need help on this, and you'll get the feedback.
Mate, that's it's incredible, honestly, just listening to that. It's what you're saying is surrounding yourself with those people, but the fact is that when you're saying things like that, and with your experience and your success so far, it's the conversations like this is why I wanted to start this podcast, so people can come and listen to that story, and they can actually spend that time to have their ideas themselves, and it's right in front of them. So thank you very much for that. Bro, I just want to wrap up with like 3 quick questions. You've kind of touched on it already, but like your 3 keys to success, what are they?
3 keys to success. Okay, okay, here we go. 3 keys to success. Number 1, I think it's really important to have what I call like clear the mental garage, and David Coggins talks about this, and I didn't really recognize this, but when you like, let's just say you have a messy garage, and let's say the garage represents your mind. Like, if you don't tidy up the garage when you first start, then you're not going to be able to fit anything in it, and it's like a circuit breaker. Eventually the circuit breaker is just going to go boom, and when you get under stress and under a lot of things, you're just going to blow up, and it's just not going to work, or when the days you don't feel like doing it, you're not going to do it, and it's just going to blow, right? So you have to clean the garage up, right? What sort of stuff do you need to do to be successful? And you got to start to clean everything up. And when you clean up your garage, mate, you can fit a car in there, you can fit 2 cars in there, you can fit a bike in there. So your mind now is like clear and primed for success. So yeah, like I think a lot of, and this is me talking to young entrepreneurs, because like a lot of young entrepreneurs, like most successful entrepreneurs, they know that, and they've got that kind of clear mind. But I think number 1, clean up your garage. Number 2, and this is going to be a bit brutal, but in all honesty, you can't give a fuck what anyone thinks of you, mate. Like, that's one thing I learned in my life. Like, there's always going to be people that don't like you. There's always going to be people that kind of like you, and there's going to be people that support you and love you, And the biggest thing that I found is the more time that I spend with people who support me and that encourage me and that want to see me succeed, the happier that I am. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? Like happiness really isn't just a destination, but it's a journey. And if you can if you're supported by people that are good people and genuinely care about you, you're gonna go 10x the speed, bro. That anyone could if they're hanging out with losers. So really, number 2 is look at who your friends are, look at who you're hanging out with, and if they're not who you want to be, then it's brutal, but change that up. And number 3, I would say, as an entrepreneur, you have to have it's a complete paradox. Like, it's an openness of mind, right, to learn new things, but an extreme focus on what you want to do. So if you can grapple with that, if you can have like an open thought to trying new things and learning off new people and being humble enough to refine your processes, but be super narrow in what you believe and what you want to achieve, then I think that's probably a good characteristic to have. I think those 3 things probably sum it up quite well.
Brilliant. That's class. Second question, what's your biggest inspiration?
Biggest inspiration? Honestly, this is going to be real cheesy and corny, but I've kind of heard this story before as well. I can't remember who I heard it from, but it's kind of like, imagine at the end of your life, bro, you get sent to heaven, and God's there, and God kind of reads out, let's just say Ben Stroud, and it's bro, marathon runner, great dad, had a podcast with 1 million subscribers, did this, did that, and bro, you're sitting there and it's fuck, that's not me, man. And he's that's who you could have been. That's the person that you could have been if you worked hard enough. And so I take inspiration from lots of people, my family, successful people, whatever it may be. But I think the biggest thing that's inspired me over the course, especially across the last 4 months, is you gotta maximize your life, bro. And one day you're not gonna be young anymore. One day something tragic's gonna happen in your life. And if you haven't been through, if you're not performing to who you want to be, that's what motivates me the most, right? Is I just can't be that guy, bro. I just can't be that guy who I look at myself at 55 and think, fuck, man, what am I doing? And I see so many people like that. I see so many people, and that's just brutal, but I just can't be that guy, and I'm not gonna let it happen, and so that's probably my biggest inspiration.
Respect that, bro. That's another Goggins classic. I swear I smiled as soon as you said it, because that just rings back David Goggins straight away. And
honestly, it's so true. It's so true. And so many people shit on Goggins and shit on Jordan Peterson and things like that. But don't take everything that they say literally. You gotta filter out what you want to hear and what you don't. But man, it's so true, because as I said earlier in the podcast, most of, I think, the unhappiness, the insecurity, especially amongst men, come from not doing the things that they know they should have done. Because if you don't do it, in 4 years you're going to be in the same place but older, and that's just going to bring a whole nother level of unhappiness to what you want to do. And there are certain things in your life that you ought to change, that unconsciously, that right, I need to fix that. because it's killing me, like slowly, you know. And if you don't change them, you're eventually going to be older and more unhappy. Whether it be a relationship that you're in, whether it be a toxic friendship, whether it be that you want to start a business but you haven't got the courage to do it, whether it be you have a boss that you don't like and you want to leave your job, you're all better off. And you've probably heard this before as well by, I think it's Chris Williamson. It's called the region beta paradox, and it's basically this premise where, like, let's just say you're in a relationship, like it's kind of good sometimes, but it's not great. But it's not that bad for you to end the relationship. Or you're in a job and, like, your boss is a dick, but you get good pay, you get your holiday, and you'd rather that job be so bad that you had to leave and start something for yourself, rather than it just be in this region beta, you know. And I think I'd say, bro, like 90% of people are just living in that region beta, you know. They're just cruising, and that's why I like Goggins, you know.
Just comfortable enough to stay there, but not so uncomfortable that it forces change, right? Yeah. Modern Wisdom, man, such a good podcast. The insight's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's like just like a universal truth, you know. Like, I truly believe that there's certain things that, as I said, I've kind of mentioned, like these unconscious thoughts that you have that you know ought to be true, and then when he says it like that, it's like bang, like I've known that all my life, like I've seen it before, I understand it, but now I know how to conceptualize it in a way. Yeah, it's just super powerful, man. Like I think about that quite a bit, and encourage people. And again, going back to entrepreneurs, right, is if you're a young entrepreneur, there's a big difference between you wanting something to happen and you needing something to happen, you know. When you want to start a business, it's nice, but on the Sunday you're chilling, mate, because you just want it, you know. But when you need something to happen, your mentality is completely different. Like, if you know that you can't pay your next bill if you don't sell, if your business doesn't succeed, mate, that's like your mindset changes completely. And I honestly, this is probably for another day, bro, but I still to this day think that that's why New Zealand football is in the state that it's in, because all the investment is in the big clubs, where they have players and kids where if they don't become pro, bro, it's not a big issue, you know. And like around the world, it's completely the opposite. The best players come from underprivileged, under low socioeconomic areas. Why? Because it's not a want. Everyone wants to become a pro footballer. Everyone wants to become a business owner. But who needs it? You know, it's huge. Like, if you're a kid and you need to become a pro footballer because your mum can't afford to pay rent, mate, your mentality changes completely. And I think that's I see it all the time too. And that's why I like betting on underdogs and coaching kids that don't come from great areas and supporting entrepreneurs that don't come from wealthy families, because the mentality is different, eh?
Yeah, man, that's I think there's definitely a conversation to pick up on somewhere else, but yeah, there's a lot left on the table to even talk about today. But
for round two, bro.
For round two, we'll save it for a rainy day. But last question, man. It was out of the three. It's like, what's your why? What is your purpose? What is Dylan Morris's why?
Yeah. Again, I think that has evolved in the past 4 to 6 months, and I've been through quite like a big change in my life, like across the last 4 to 6 months. Kind of, it's like breaking up with my girlfriend and moving out, and like really just changing my complete mindset on things. and my why it truly used to be about me, and it used to be about what I want to be and what I want to become, you know, and really now it's changed into my why is about inspiring and educating young footballers to become better, and not just about football but life. I think football is a great representation on life, and kind of coaching, starting a business on football, being involved in football. That truly is like my why now. Is like how can I impact the next generation to not just be professional footballers, but to intertwine what we have talked about today into their life, and if you can do that and you can impact the most amount of kids, 1% aren't gonna like you, but 99% are gonna thank you at the end of it. So that's kind of the why now.
Oh, I gotta end it by saying thank you to you, man. That's for your insight, your experience, your wisdom. Really, really special to be able to hear that and have that conversation. I do believe that whoever listens to that will take a lot of value from it. So I appreciate you jumping on in the Arena podcast, man, spending the time, because I know that you're super busy, and looking forward to just following you in your journey, where the brand goes, where the company goes, and how many lives you do impact, which is super exciting, man. So thank you.
Thank you, bro. And as I say, like, it's been a big honor to be part of your journey, and to kind of be one of your first guests, and for you to think of me in that way, that I do have value. Bro, like it goes likewise, I'm really excited to see where this takes you. Just complete 50 of these, bro, and I'm telling you, by episode 50, man, you'll underestimate what you can do in a year, but in 3 years and 4 years, mate, you could be in unbelievable space, and that's what I'm rooting for, and what I hope out of the End of the Arena podcast.
Top man, bro. I really appreciate it. Cheers,
my guy.
Thank you.
Cheers, bro.